All right, welcome out to our podcast here again. We have Owen Miller back with us today from the ASA. As we know, big, beautiful bill, HPA, no tax stamp, all this stuff has been on everyone's minds. Everyone's talking about it. Good information out there, bad information out there, opinions out there. Let's bust the onion open.
As you said, Trump's big, beautiful bill that's now been signed into law by the president is had some great provisions in there for the NFA world. And, 91 years in the making, this is kind of the first chink in the armor of the NFA in all that time. And, when ASA started back in 2011, the whole mission was to get suppressors out of the NFA. That's the target that we were aiming for. Unfortunately, we didn't quite make it all the way, but this is still a win for gun owners to the tune of, $200 million a year in taxes.
Per year, right?
Per year that won't be paid by law-abiding gun owners to own suppressors, SBRs, AOWs. So it's still a huge win.
We're mad.
We're mad. We're disappointed.
That's probably a better way to say it.
Didn't get it all the way across the finish line with removing these items from the NFA.
Yep.
We had an unfortunate ruling by the Senate parliamentarian, who's kind of the arbiter of the rules of the Senate. For those that want a little lesson on this, we pushed for this through the reconciliation process, which the reconciliation process is basically a budget process by way that the Senate can pass budget-related bills with only 50 votes instead of the usual 60 vote requirement to overcome a filibuster. And so, all of this big, beautiful bill, and it covered a lot of things, everything from Medicaid to illegal immigration to NFA firearms, all of these components kind of had to be viewed by the parliamentarian. And if you look at her rulings on these issues, there was an obvious partisan bias that was taking place there. This parliamentarian's been in that position for, I think, 13 or 14 years now. She was appointed by Harry Reid, the Democrat from
That was going to be my
Nevada.
question. Yeah, who appoints that person?
So she's appointed by the majority leader. The majority leader has the power to fire or overrule the parliamentarian. There's a whole host of reasons why that didn't happen in this case. We kind of feel that it probably should have. But at the end of the day, she ruled that our provisions to remove suppressors and SBRs and SBSs from the NFA did not comply with the Senate rules, the Byrd rules for a reconciliation bill. We wholeheartely disagree with that. In fact, we're filing a lawsuit in federal court to try and get us the rest of the way across the finish line. Now that the tax is $0, this has been upheld. The NFA has been upheld as a revenue generating measure. Well, you can't generate any revenue with a $0 tax. So we're taking that to federal court now to try and finish the job that we couldn't get done in the Senate.
Let me ask a couple questions on that. So, let's look at what we did with the braces, back and forth through the courts, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of in and out, overturned, misinterpreted, reinterpreted. Is getting something through with a bill just stronger in general? Is it harder to undo? Would be my first question.
No, I actually think that this is probably the better route, honestly. If we win in the federal courts, and there's a couple different lawsuits that are coming out of this, but I think the win in the courts will be the stronger win that will give us a longer lasting protection if we can get these out of the NFA and get 2A protections for these items.
Perfect. Because I've heard even like, is it Senator Clyde? Is that the guy?
Representative
Clyde.
Yeah, from Georgia. He's a Class 3 dealer. I've known Clyde before he was in Congress.
Gotcha.
He pushed for an amendment on the House side. So after the House sent the bill to the Senate, Senate Finance added provisions from the Short Act, which was the short barrel rifles and shotguns and AOWs. So the House had already put the suppressor piece in. Senate Finance added the other components. Then part of it got stripped out, of course, by the parliamentarian. And then the final bill went back to the House for a concurrence vote, and Clyde proposed, to his credit, good on him, he proposed a bill to put back the provisions to remove them from the NFA. Unfortunately, all it would have done was go back to the Senate then, and the parliamentarian would have stripped those components again.
Gotcha. So that has already kind of come and gone, that amendment?
Yep, absolutely.
That's done then.
Yeah, the bill.
He tried it. It didn't go through.
Correct.
Got it.
The House held their concurrence vote. I think it was on the 3rd of July. Yep. It went to the president to be signed on the 4th of July, which is what the president wanted. So the bill is done. It's baked.
So there's no amendments after the signing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done. It would have to be a whole.
So that door's closed. The only route left is the. Well,
not necessarily. There is the opportunity for more reconciliation bills, next year in Congress.
Okay.
So the door is never closed on the legislative front.
Well, I just meant on that specific one.
But this specific one big beautiful bill is
and the amendment to it is
correct.
Done. That door's come and closed.
Yeah, it's done. It's baked. It's been signed into law by the president. The effective date, as many of you know, is January 1st. There was kind of a weird effective date clause in there that's something to the effect of 90 days after quarters beginning from when the president signs it. It's kind of a weird way to do it, but if you look through that entire bill, that effective date clause is in a bunch of different places, so it wasn't applied specifically to this NFA.
So some
portion.
did get 90, but we got the first.
Well, everybody got it. It's a weird kind of wording that it's 90 days following quarters out beginning after the president signs. So the president signed it July 4th, which is the beginning of the third quarter. So the next quarter begins October 1st, which is the fourth quarter, and then it's 90 days from that. So it's essentially January 1st.
That's how they came up with that date.
Again, it's kind of an odd way to word it, but it was used throughout the bill, and for a lot of reasons, tax provisions and things like that. That's the beginning of the tax year for us as taxpayers. It's not the federal fiscal year, but it's
right.
The beginning of the year for us taxpayers. So that's when it takes effect.
Got it. So that's one we've talked about. I know the industry's talking about what that's going to look like for the suppressor industry in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of different ideas that have come up and from dealers, distributors, manufacturers.
Yeah, if you're a consumer right now, there's honestly, I know I say it all the time, but there's never been a better time to buy, right? Right now
that's
is always the best time to buy. The gun business overall, not necessarily suppressors, but the gun business overall is generally slow during the summer, and that's when you tend to see a lot of deals and a lot of available inventory. That seems to be the case with suppressors. And, I know there's a lot of dealers and distributors and manufacturers running promotions right now. And then I know a lot of dealers are offering to hang on to a suppressor. Like, hey, if you want to buy it now, beat the rush, right? Because come January 1 with zero tax, there's going to be a lot of buyers. So, buy your item now, lock it in at a great price, and they'll hang on to it until January 1, and you can file your transfer then, and avoid paying the tax. Or you can pay the tax now if you don't want to wait, and you'll have it in, a week or two.
Our local average, we're 3 to 4 days here locally.
Yeah.
Someone comes in on Monday, they will always, or at least here in Idaho, right at our facility, they'll have it by the end of the week. That's what we see over and over again. It's really that, I think, having the free tax stamp 2A wise is a major win. That's, like you said, we've never had anything like that where we're going into the winning side. But I think the biggest change in the industry has still been the wait time. That was huge, and you guys were spearheading that as well. That's the last time we had you on, and great job on that. And that's held true. They're still in the trenches, moving stuff through every day.
It's still holding true. I know that ATF is a little bit worried about, obviously come January 1, right? There's going to be
a bunch all at once.
There's going to be a bunch all at once. All the people that are buying now and kind of just waiting until that $0 tax, plus everybody who's going to start buying on January 1, and SBRs and other things. So
I feel like it's going to be kind of a rerun, like what we seen when they were changing the trust. What was those days when we had the pickup?
41F.
We had pickups full of forms, literally. And
I think you'll see a bunch. I don't know if it'll quite be that kind of rush, but it's definitely going to increase, right? That for all the folks that were waiting, that $200 still meant something to them. They're going to start buying, and so it'll be an increase. But I mean, look, even if we're 2 or 3 times the volume that we are today, if transfer times double or triple, we're still talking about 2 or 3 weeks instead of a week, which, it's not like the bad old days when it was 10 months, 12 months, 14 months. So, I think we'll see a little bit of a rush, and we'll see kind of a new normal that'll level out at some point, that'll be higher than it is now, just because of the zero tax. And so we'll have to see how that shakes out, but just know that, right around that January 1st, for probably the first month or so after that, it might get a little hairy on transfer times, but I don't think it's going to be bad. We're already talking with ATF. We've had, multiple conversations already. We've got more meetings scheduled, so that we can, kind of make sure that the implementation goes as smooth as possible once it takes effect.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit earlier about when they did the brace rule and, SBRs, and they stopped the fee for a while. And can you explain how they actually did that, how they're able to do that? And how that could affect this? Yeah,
so that the term that was used was a forbearance. They provided a forbearance on the tax where you could register your brace-equipped firearm as an SBR and not pay the $200 tax. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the ins and outs of exactly what legal justification they had to not assess the tax, because the tax is set in code from Congress, as part of the NFA. So I'm not exactly sure how they did that forbearance and whether or not they'd be able to do it again, in this period between now and January 1st when it takes effect. It'd be cool if they could, and we would certainly support it. Anything that can be done to avoid paying that punitive tax that we've had for 90 plus years would be fantastic for gun owners. It's, as you were saying, this is the first time in a long time, certainly in my memory, that we've had as big a win for gun owners at the federal level. The state level, in the last 30, 40 years, the growth in the issuance, shall issue concealed carry permits and constitutional carry now. Those have been big movements that have happened over the last 30, 40 years at the state levels, but at the federal level,
we've really had nothing.
Had nothing. We had the NFA originally in 1934. We had the Gun Control Act in 1968. We had the Hughes Amendment that banned machine guns in 1986. We got a few protections out of the Firearm Owners Protection Act in '86, but I wouldn't. They were good for gun owners, but they weren't, wins where we gained rights back, particularly. We had the '94 assault weapons ban. Arguably Congress's inaction by allowing that to sunset in 2004 could be argued as a win, but if that was considered a win, it's been 21 years since that happened.
All it did was sunset. They just did nothing.
Exactly. They did nothing to renew it. And so, we've had the Bipartisan Community Safer Communities Act. We've had all these bills. Gun control has been kind of a one-way ratchet, clamping down on gun owners for the last 90 plus years.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time that ratchet kind of went the other direction. And would we have liked it to go farther? Absolutely. I mean, we fought tooth and nail for it right up to the end. But once the parliamentarian made her decision and we had conversations with congressional leadership, and it became pretty obvious that they were not going to overrule or fire the parliamentarian. I mean, that was really the only path
out of it at the time.
And it became very clear that just wasn't going to happen. And so, we took the win of reducing the tax. We had that placed in the House version of the bill, as sort of a belt and suspenders approach, that if one failed, the other could hopefully proceed. And so, I'm glad we had the forethought to put kind of a backup plan in there.
And that did go through, and that it all didn't get yanked out.
Yeah, the parliamentarian had made her decision, but in making her decision, she had ruled there was a provision in there that could have potentially changed the AOW transfer tax from $5 that it was or is currently up to $200 to make it match. And so part of her ruling was saying, well, that's okay. You can't remove these items from the tax code, but you can change the level of the tax. And so we said, well, if you can change the AOW tax from $5 to $200, then you can change the transfer tax on everything that's $200 down to $0. And that's
where you got her.
Yep, that passed muster. And so, that's what ended up staying in the bill. And there were certainly amendments by the other side to have those provisions stripped out, and we were able to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire and make sure that those stayed in.
Yeah.
And so, is it the win we wanted? No. I mean, it's I kind of liken it to, we had hoped to win the Super Bowl by 50 points. We only won by 5, but it's a win nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know you guys have spent a lot of time back there in DC.
Yeah.
Prepping before you're going. I mean, it's been a long year from my view, watching you guys I know it's come, this is the 8th time it came. Was that right?
Yeah, I think so.
The 8th time we've put it in, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's the Hearing Protection Act has been a bill in every Congress. Every 2 years it gets reintroduced since 2015. So 10 years.
10 years of hard labor and I've seen this time just the massive amount of time and effort going into it.
Yeah.
And really focusing in on it and getting squeaking a win out. I mean, it's amazing.
And the Hearing Protection Act, it's still an active bill in Congress. Ben Klein from Virginia is sponsoring it in the House. Senator Crapo from here in Idaho was the chief sponsor for the Senate side.
Yep.
And that bill is still living out there in Congress that would, again, remove suppressors from the NFA. But again, trying to get over that 60 vote hurdle to avoid the filibuster is just something that seems pretty unlikely. I think,
that was what we were up. Yeah. And you said that before you guys went into it. That was that's the hurdle, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at this reconciliation bill, and again, this had tons of different provisions in there related to tax and budget. But I mean, it squeaked by very narrowly. It was tied 50-50, and the vice president, J.D. Vance, was
had to break it.
He had to break the tie. So we had defectors from the Republican Party on this bill, and it may have been gun related. It may have been some of the other provisions, whether it was Medicaid or something else. But again, it squeaked by pretty narrowly. The House had a little bit more margin, but not a bunch. So I think it was 217 to 213, if my memory serves correct.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so it's just, as Congress becomes more and more evenly divided, it becomes more of a challenge to get
anything
through. Even these must-pass bills like this are barely squeaking through. And so, the idea that will we continue to push for removal from the NFA through legislation? Absolutely. It's how and why ASA started. It's been our mission since the beginning, and we've had this bill for the last 10 years. The legislative process, I mean, it just takes a long time sometimes. There's a lot of education that goes on. There's been a massive shift in public perception of suppressors over the last 10, 15 years, in large part to the work that we're doing to, educate people about them. But still, it just takes a long time to accomplish. I just saw a post the other day from one of our partner organizations that deals in the conservation space, and they were successful this year in ending the prohibition on Sunday hunting in a couple states back east. And they've been working on that for 14 years now. And wow. you look at just the timeline of how long it takes to accomplish legislation sometimes, and it can be very long.
What district is that lawsuit going into?
I don't have the answer to that just yet. We're looking at a couple districts and trying to figure out what would be most advantageous. But yeah, the premise again is that we're challenging the validity of the NFA now that the tax is $0. In 1937, the Supreme Court upheld the NFA as a revenue generating measure. They said primarily the purpose of the NFA is to generate revenue. Its secondary purpose of registration was to evidence the fact that the tax had been paid. So the registration was just to prove that you had paid tax. And that case was later cited as late as, I think, 2012 by the Supreme Court in the Obamacare case, the Affordable Care Act, upholding the individual mandate. So, I mean, the Supreme Court has, within the last 10, 15 years, still continued to cite that precedence that the NFA is primarily a revenue-generating measure. And so now, if these items no longer generate revenue through a transfer tax, that calls into question whether or not the registration component should stand. So
yeah, if you don't need a receipt for it, basically that's what they were saying, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
If there's no charge, there's no receipt.
Yep. The tax
there's
stamp,
no need.
The tax stamp and the Form 4 is your proof of registration that the tax has been paid.
Yeah, and really, truly, if they're not having to do a background check, we will generate revenue for not having to hire extra people to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So their workload will go down.
Yeah, and there's a ton of ways that we can, address some of those things, that we can, even with the NFA, there's a ton of ways to make what is there more efficient, or to just simply remove that function. But a lot of people think that a lot of people used to think that the long wait time was because there was some special background check that was being run as part to get an NFA item.
That was bigger than the normal NICS check.
Exactly.
But it's a NICS check.
Yeah, it's a NICS check. And
it's the same as if you buy a rifle or a pistol or...
Yep, it's literally run by the same people.
Same guys, same department.
Same databases.
Yeah.
Even the requirement for fingerprints, the fingerprints aren't used now because the computerized databases actually do a better job of assessing someone's background. So the only reason that fingerprints are still required is because they're required as part of the statute. So the statute requires fingerprints, so that's why you submit them. But in general, they're not used unless for some reason, you've got a complex background that, you're coming up delayed, and they can use those fingerprints to hopefully clear you. But otherwise, for 80+% of NFA applicants, the NICS system gives them an auto proceed just using the computer indices.
Yeah. So. No, that's great. Hopefully we keep trudging along on the right track. I know, just talking to everyone, there's a lot of upset people, but there's a lot of people that are
myself
excited,
included.
I mean, at least we got something.
Yeah.
It proves that we can do it too, right? Yeah.
To all the people out there that felt that this was a compromise, we absolutely hear you, and, we're not happy about it. To think that any organization or group on our side of the fence somehow accepted that parliamentarian ruling is just patently false. I was on the calls with so many organizations. You can look on our website or on our X account and see the coalition of groups that signed on to various letters and things like that. Every one of those groups fought tooth and nail for full NFA removal. And, when the parliamentarians shut it down, we didn't stop fighting there. We continued to push. But like I said, it just became clear that the Senate was not going to overrule a parliamentarian.
The Hail Mary was the amendment, right?
Yep.
That was, okay, let's try this too. And
yep. Yeah. And so, to the folks out there that are mad that we didn't get it all the way, we're mad with you.
Absolutely.
We're mad right there with you. And that's why we're taking on this lawsuit to get the rest of what was owed to us in terms of removing these items from the NFA and the unconstitutional taxing and registration scheme that is the NFA.
Yeah, it is a scheme.
So, we just ask you to keep on fighting with us. And, sometimes it takes a long time, but I really feel strongly that we're going to get there. So,
yeah. And you have the best shot we've ever had too. With the $0, it does give us a leg to stand on, does give us something to take right at them. And
sometimes the process of getting this done just has to happen in steps, and the right steps have to fall in the right order. To get it across the finish line. And I think we've getting that tax to zero and then taking on the court challenge, honestly, again, may be the better, more lasting result of dismantling the NFA.
And that's why I brought that up earlier. It's like, how does this stick?
A lot of people ask,
how is it the hardest to undo, where you go through a new administration and then they just undo everything and we're right back where we were.
Right.
And that's getting old, right? We've been through that with the brace, up and down, back and forth, opinions.
Right.
And I would like some to just stay.
Yeah. A lot of people asked, hey, what prevents a future administration from, taking the $0 tax and raising it? And the answer is nothing, other than the ire of gun owners and, fighting against it. And the same could be said for, trying to, if we had been successful in removing them from the NFA, what would prevent a future Congress or administration from putting them back in the NFA? And the answer is probably nothing. That threat has always been there. There have been bills in the last couple Congresses by Dems to raise the tax to, there was one by Jamie Raskin out of Maryland that would have raised the tax to $300 immediately and then pegged it to inflation. So it would just increase incrementally every year. It also would have doubled the SOT tax paid by dealers and manufacturers and pegged that to inflation. Those bills have been out there. It's no secret, that members of Congress have at least voiced their opinions of wanting to try. And during this discussion about the big beautiful bill. There was a member of Congress that was talking about raising the tax to 600. So those proposals are certainly out there, and so I think that's where if we are successful in winning in court, that is going to be the longer lasting prevention.
Ruling,
from allowing the NFA to grow or continue. As far as machine guns and destructive devices, the transfer tax on those remained 200. There certainly seems to be less appetite by Congress
in that arena.
To look at those, unfortunately. But it's
not right. But again, pick and choose your battles.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't win all the battles, but trying to win the war.
Yeah.
I think that's keep your eye on the ball. And what I keep hearing, though, too, is your vote counts. Who we put in these positions counts.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure your voice is heard counts. I think they heard from us more than they've ever heard.
Yeah,
and this last thing, this was not, people came out of everywhere in the country and voiced their opinions and reached out to people. And that's what makes the change.
There was a very strong and united front from not only gun organizations, but gun owners and gun companies, all basically saying the same thing, that we want these things out of the NFA. And when that didn't happen, we want the tax to be zero on these. And we talked to a number of congressional offices that said, our phones are blowing up, our emails are, filling up, we're getting letters, we're getting calls. And so it's good. The message was heard.
Yep.
And that is
very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, again, going back to the courts, we've got our suit in Illinois. We're waiting on the judge to rule on that case. So we've got state level, federal litigation, going on. So it's a federal lawsuit against the state of Illinois to overturn their ban on suppressor ownership, on constitutional grounds. We're making progress. It's a small place, but Guam, the legislature in Guam just recently passed a bill to legalize suppressor ownership in Guam. Puerto Rico could very well be next. Unfortunately, in Guam, the governor vetoed the bill again. However, this year, the legislature has a veto-proof majority, so we're waiting on them to host their special session here this month to hopefully re-vote on that bill and overturn the governor's veto. So a lot of exciting things happening. I mean, it's just this kind of groundswell of support behind suppressors in the last 10 years, and just again that shift in mentality about suppressors that's happening is finally kind of reaching its apex. So
I really feel like the day and age we live in, and the internet and the way information travels now, can work to our benefit. And people are finding out suppressors aren't so scary, right? They're sound mitigation devices that help protect our hearing and those around us. And
100%.
It's not an assassin's tool.
No, they're not scary. They're not something to be afraid of. They're a very useful tool for law-abiding gun owners, again, to protect their hearing, to make the shooting sports more enjoyable. And,
absolutely.
Protect yourself while you're engaging in those activities.
If you had no background in the topic and you walked in and did a gun build and it was an option, I think everyone would always add it. Mm-hmm. It just makes sense. And the more we can get that word out, the better. The more, I know you guys bring congressmen in and senators and do shoots, don't you?
Yeah.
What do you guys call that? I can't remember.
We do a lot of legislative demos. We particularly did a whole lot of them early on in ASA's development because we were working so much at the state level. The first 5 years or so of ASA, we were really focused on state advocacy. We opened up 19 states to allow suppressors for hunting. So when I bought my first suppressor, gosh, it was like 19 or 20 states that allowed you to hunt with a suppressor. It wasn't very many. And then it was 38 states that allowed you to own one. Now you can own one in 42 states, and you can hunt with it in 41 states. So Connecticut is the one odd state where you can own a suppressor but you can't hunt with it there. But yeah, everywhere else, ownership and hunting is legal, and we're not going to stop until that's all 50 states plus U.S. territories.
Yeah, the hunting one's funny. I had a couple guys hit me up about unfair advantage with a silencer, and it didn't take me too long. One, we're using a rifle, so that's pretty good advantage, but two, before the rifles, people shot animals with bows and arrows for centuries, and they're all silent. So it's not a new thing to be quiet while you're hunting. It's actually the oldest way to hunt.
And we hear that one a lot, that somehow a suppressor on a rifle offers an unfair advantage. And I always tell people, well, how bad of hunter are you? Because if you're shooting a rifle with a supersonic round
at an animal that doesn't have a weapon,
right,
should be a one-shot deal.
It should be. And if you think about it, a supersonic round, the bullet will impact the target before the animal ever hears.
Before it even heard the shot.
Before it ever heard the shot. So if you did it right and you did it well, then you've completed your hunt before the animal ever heard the shot either way.
Yeah, so and to say that
doesn't.
And then that's that education piece. And even when you did fire, it makes a sound. Usually around 130 to 140 decibels.
Yeah.
Up on a mountainside, the deer is still going to know where you're at,
Anywhere within 500, 600, 700 yards.
Yeah.
You're still going to hear the sound of the rifle.
Where when you're worried about stepping on a stick, if you fire a rifle, they know where you're at,
Yeah.
So.
We hunt, we do a hog hunt, and we have a property down in Georgia that we're able to go to. It's a big property. It's something like 7,000 acres. And so we've got, 10 hunters out in tree stands all spread over the property. The property has something like 40 miles of roads on it. And even positioned all around this property, we hear the other shots that people are taking, and it's thick treed, forest and everything, and that sound still carries. So, we're always texting each other, hey, was that you? Did you get one? You know, and so, the idea that suppressors are an unfair advantage to hunters is just a myth. Yeah,
and you've seemed to break that wall down. One state left. Hanging on there, and
one state left hanging on for dear life. Connecticut. It's we'll see if we can knock that one off.
And I got a good buddy that lives there that's just dying for that to pass. So he's ready. Old Carl Higbee. He's quite the hunter and loves his suppressor. So he's waiting. So maybe we could get him involved. He's quite the guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to do a demo. We found that that's a really effective way to educate lawmakers who, you think of most people, heck, even a lot of gun owners still to this day, their only exposure, the only knowledge they have about a suppressor is something they've seen in the movies or on TV. And we just, no matter even how accurate the movies now try and maybe make it, it's just not accurate to comparing it to real life. And so, getting a lawmaker out there and, letting them hear it firsthand. Hey, this is what a suppressed hunting rifle sounds like. This is what a suppressed shotgun sounds like. This is what a suppressed pistol actually sounds like. It's always pretty eye-opening for them to go, wow, I thought it would have been quieter. It's like, they are quiet. The technology is amazing. We've come a long way in what manufacturers are making now.
But it still makes noise.
Yeah. Still makes noise.
A good way to come see that for yourself. I know we travel around a lot. ASA travels around a lot, and we set up lots of different shooting events. If you haven't had exposure, come out to one of the events. It's a great way. Grab a couple buddies, grab some family members, come out and shoot and get that experience.
Yeah,
it's always something you can't replace by watching it on YouTube or anything.
Yeah, I had my first experience with suppressors 25 years ago now. I bought my first suppressor shortly thereafter, back in the bad old days when it was all paper forms and it always took a year and a half to get them.
Yep.
And I still did it and I loved it. And obviously, my hobby gone terribly wrong. I've ended up in the industry, working at Gemtech with Jake, for quite a few years. And then now in advocacy because I'm such a passionate believer in suppressors. So everybody at ASA comes from a shooting background. We're all suppressor owners and users. And so, the advocacy, the work we do, it's not just a job. It's very personal to us. We very much believe in what we do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's great. I wanted to touch a little bit about on the ASA sound standard.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. We might save the whole deal for another podcast, but just to give guys a basic idea of kind of what's been happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely, yeah. So, that is a whole podcast in and of itself. We can get together and nerd out on the science at some point. But as Jake said, the ASA has been developing a sound testing standard. It's really the first scientifically based testing standard. Primarily for industry to use in then providing a consumer data point that allows consumers to compare suppressors apples to apples. Again, we won't get too deep into the weeds on it, but we hired a very impressive group of PhD sound engineers, audiologists, scientists, that have been in that space for 30 plus years each. And they went out and developed a testing standard for us. And it essentially allows you to remove all of the variables in the test host and the testing equipment so that you are ending up with a true and accurate reflection of what the suppressor is doing. And
on a certain caliber, on a certain barrel length.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Certain caliber, certain barrel length.
Yep.
The initial standard was actually utilizing a universal receiver and a proof barrel. So it was a single shot, closed breech, sealed system. So again, you were just basically eliminating all the variables of, bolt gun, barrel length, semi-auto, direct impingement, piston driven, trying to remove all those variables. We have since further developed that standard where it will allow for testing on more common firearms using a fixture and a pressure sensor. So that
the pressure sensor's on the barrel.
Correct.
So if there's a variation in pressures from the ammo, it'll pick that up and know that could have a factor on the sound.
Exactly, and all that information will have to be included then in the data and the report that gets generated
to validate
the standard.
Yep.
So we're getting ready to launch it here shortly. It's really exciting. I think it's going to be really beneficial to the industry, to manufacturers, but also to consumers to, have kind of a trusted standard that when they see a number published, with the ASA sound testing standard logo next to it, they know that, hey, this was tested in a certain way.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. There's room for tons of that out there. I feel like we've had the Gov standard, meter to the left, forever, and same deal. It's a measurement point at a certain location. I know when we shoot and test our suppressors, we have multiple measurement points. One, it saves time and ammo and all that, and there's a lot of different perspectives based on where you stand as a shooter. Yeah, if you're standing to the left of the shooter or behind them or even in front of them as a foe or enemy or even if you're in a stack, military wise, law enforcement wise, there's all these different variables. And
Right.
I know one thing, when I got to go watch you guys set that up, how many meters did you guys set up? When they did that full test to find the location, there was hundreds of meters.
Yeah. We've been working with these scientists probably since 2015, and then again later hired them, and so we did some work with them. We brought some firearms and some suppressors out for them to start really gathering a whole lot of data, and they set up essentially a dome of microphones.
Yeah, there's hundreds of them, right?
Hundreds of microphones.
Inches apart, spread out in the whole room.
Exactly, yeah. So we did a bunch of outdoor testing. We even had microphones downrange capturing, the ballistic crack, the N waves. And so it was pretty impressive. But from all that data, then they were able to identify which microphone positions and distances most accurately represent what the shooter is hearing. And a lot of manufacturers and people testing have tried to simulate that by putting a microphone by the shooter's left ear, by the shooter's right ear. And whether or not you're wearing big muffs or foam plugs or all these things affect,
or how big your head is.
All these things affect kind of the propagation of the noise. And so they've identified kind of a position for a microphone that can eliminate all that variability.
No, it's really cool to see. Basically, in that location, what I seen was your head could be off quite a bit. The weapon could even be off quite a bit, and it still maintained the most accurate reading. That's why they picked that spot, right?
Exactly.
And that's huge for us. I mean, there is so many variables, and so I'll save the rest for another one, because I know we'd like to. I mean, we shoot the ASA location in our facility currently. We use the location. We haven't put into effect all the new things with the different jigs and things like that, but we have been shooting the location probably for a year and a half, 2 years now. And we do see that it's a steady measurement point, and that's big for us. We use other points as well, but that one is always in our testing. We've enjoyed adding that to it. There's good data from it. So
good.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Just thanks again for the hard work. I know it's a lot time away from family, a lot of hours of reading and prepping, and you guys did good. I mean,
well, thank you. It was a hard fought battle, and again, we would have liked to have gotten more. We're gonna aim for more through these lawsuits. And, anything, if you guys are out there and want to support our efforts, one, support the industry, go buy a suppressor from a company that's in this fight with us. You can become an ASA member. We'd be honored to have you. You can make a donation. If you just want to make a one-time donation, you can go to suppressor.org /donate. Or you can go to asamember.com and become a member. We do some fundraising raffles throughout the year, which are always a fun time to, give away some awesome prizes. And we appreciate all the sponsors that donate product to help us raise funds for this fight. I'd like to say that this battle is cheap, but it's not. We've probably had nearly 24 trips up to Washington, D.C. this year. And that stuff's expensive. It costs money. I wish it didn't. I wish we didn't have to spend all this money just to protect our God-given Second Amendment rights. But at the end of the day, we do. And, any support that you folks out there can give, whether it's $5 or $100, is always appreciated. So.
Absolutely. I know it goes a long ways for you guys, and we've supported ASA for years, and we appreciate everything they do. And I know it takes time, effort, money, talents, abilities. So we're in it together. So the more we help each other, the further we'll get along. Thanks for coming out, Owen.
Awesome.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Jake.
you.
Always great.
Yep.